Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this expert afternoon session, the 11th actually in a series of these regular events. Today we're going to be looking at how to automate repetitive tasks in your label pre-press process. The speakers today is myself, Jonathan Cannon, and my colleague here, Дейв Робертс.
Hi, everyone.
Now, before we start, guys, just some general info. By default, everybody on the call, apart from myself and David, are muted, just to avoid any unwanted background noise. If you do have any questions throughout the session, and we do urge you to ask questions, it certainly makes the sessions more interesting. There's a little questions tab on the bottom right of your browser. Pop your question in there, and me and Dave will do our best to answer it. All the questions are anonymous, so it's only myself and Dave that can see the questions. So, you know, don't be shy. Please use that system there for asking questions. The webinar is being recorded, so maybe you're watching us on a replay now. I'm not sure, but if you have to leave or you can't stay for the duration, you'll get a link at the end of the session. You'll be able to rewatch the session or share it with colleagues. If you're having any audio or video issues, just refresh the browser window and everything should be okay. So just before we start, just a quick introduction from myself. So this is me here on the right-hand side. I've been with Esko now for 5 years, working as what we call an ASM, predominantly in the south of the UK. And the role really is a technical pre-sales role where we get involved in scoping projects and helping with the implementation of solutions for customers, you know, varying from our point solutions right through to our enterprise solutions and some of the automation systems that we're going to be showing today. So very good to be here with you today. Dave?
Yeah, likewise. I mean, John and I share the role, if you like, in the UK. John covers the south, I cover the north and the Nordics. I've been with Esko now for 10 years. And like John says, you know, the role really is about looking at how customers operate today and seeing where, you know, we can implement maybe some solution that Esko have in the portfolio that's going to help really automate and speed up those processes to getting that material out of the door.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And for those of you that may not have attended these sessions before, just a couple of words about what they actually are. So we do these live sessions. There'll be live demos that you'll see shortly. So if it goes wrong, you know, it is live, so bear with us. But we tend to focus it around a topic or a selection of topics. It's aimed at people really that may already be using our software, but perhaps want to use more of our software or curious about what else we might be able to do with you. We'll always look at some kind of focused use cases, share ideas and knowledge throughout the sessions. And also there'll be some interactive elements here. So you may notice at the bottom right of the screen, there's something that says polls. So that will be us asking questions of yourselves. If you could commit a response when you see that little button light up, that'll be very interesting for us to get your feedback. And also, we'll also be giving you some handouts. Now, there's a little apps button again on the bottom right of the screen. If you click on that, you'll see already we've preloaded the some information relevant to what you're going to be seeing today. So if you want to download that in your own time and consume that, that would be very useful. Right, okay, so we've got an hour and a half here. We've got a lot of content to cover, so I'm going to just crack straight on with it right now. Okay, so just before we start, I'm assuming that the majority of you on the call are already in the label industry, and I thought we should just remind ourselves what a typical label production process could look like. Okay, so there's going to be some kind of data input at the start of the process. So you're going to be getting a design file, or maybe you're going to be picking up a file from an old range. You're going to be getting some information, could be through the MIS system, could be on a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet or something, but there's going to be some data coming into your front end for sure. Now, when you get those files and the data, you're going to want to check the quality of that data and make sure that if it's, for example, an artwork file, is it good for your print processes? Do you need to do something to that file to make it good for the print processes? And if you do need to do something good, the chances are you're taking that file and you're technically editing it. You know, maybe you're reseparating the colors, or maybe you're changing some line widths or doing something, maybe resetting a barcode. There'll be things that you're doing to make that file good for your printing process. And once you've got that file, I think it would be a very, very typical approach to send it off to a customer for final approval. Now, that could well be an email. It could be something that you're putting on some kind of shared site. Could be some kind of online portal, whatever it might be. But you're going to want to get approval on that file. The customer's either going to approve it or reject it. And if they approve it, I think the chances are then you'd probably step and repeat the file. And eventually you're going to be making 1-bit TIFFs for your plate making process, or if it's a digital job, straight to the digital front end of the press. Now, without automation, it's kind of unavoidable, really. There's going to be, this is a manual process, so there's going to be multiple people touching these files. Where there's human interaction and intervention, it's kind of inevitable that there may be some errors creeping in. We're not robots, we are human at the end of the day. It's never intentional, but it does happen. You're certainly going to be experiencing some bottlenecks in production. So when you get swamped with data, files that need processing, you want to get it through to the press as quickly as you possibly can, but the chances are you've got a limited amount of resource and you can only do what you can do in the 8 or 10 hours or however long your shift is. And a lot of these tasks as well, we would call them non-value added tasks, in so much as, it's not really where your skill sets lie. Your skill sets probably lie in getting that one-up file set up accurately and technically correct, but maybe step and repeat and making plate TIFFs and emailing files around and this kind of thing is really not adding value to your process, although you have to do it. So what we're looking at today really is how you can eliminate a lot of that manual intervention and in doing so save time, give you more capacity for sure, reduce errors. We're going to replace some of this checking with technology and some of the manual handling of the file with technology, and also increasing a consistency of process. So we want to build a framework where it's as simple as you put a file in the front end, and at the back end you get a fully stepped ripped file for the plate process, or a fully stepped file for the digital press. Okay, so there's an awful lot to cover here. Now the main focus of today is around our automation engine product. Now, I'm hoping that some of you will have heard of this before. Some of you may have already been using it or have used it, but this is really where we're going to focus our efforts, because this is where we're going to see a lot of the pre-press automation and integration take place. Now, what is automation engine? It's very much a toolkit. Okay, so it sits in the middle of a process, so we can take information in from, for example, an MIS system. We may take a file in from a web portal or some cloud storage, whatever it might be. And then we want to process that file using this automated toolbox. So maybe we're going to prepare it, trap it, export different PDF flavors for various processes, step and repeat, do some quality checks, etc., etc. And of course, we can color manage as well, although today we're not going to have time really to get into the color management side of things, but we may well look at that on a future session. And then once we've taken a file and process it, we're going to then pass it out again. So whether or not we're feeding back to an MIS system, whether we're taking a print file and pushing it straight to a digital press, pushing a TIFF file to a plate making device, whatever it might be, we want as much of this to be automated as we can. And then we will save time, reduce errors, and we will increase consistency. Okay, now as I say, automation engine is taking center stage in this presentation. But we are going to be looking at a couple of our other products, and we can show you how those products integrate as well. So the Art Pro Plus solution is our native bespoke pre-press editor designed for packaging, and our share and approve platform is our way of very easily sharing a file with a customer or a supplier, whoever it might be, or an online portal, and then getting the feedback back into automation engine off the back of the approval or the rejection. So we're going to be looking at automation engine for the majority of the time, but you will see Share and Approve and Art Pro Plus in the mix as well. And it kind of, as you would well imagine, they're all Esko products. We have integration from all of these products. So we can do stuff in Art Pro Plus and publish it to Automation Engine. And we can do stuff in Share and Approve and feedback to Automation Engine and pass stuff from Automation Engine to Share and Approve. So we've got a very nice closed loop end-to-end solution to look at. Now, the agenda, as I say, we've got a lot to pack in, so we'll try and go as quickly as we can without losing too much of the detail. But we're going to start by looking at some automated file preparing, quality checking, some automated trapping, how we can automatically proof a PDF file, so add a proof legend and send it out for approval, how we can look at automated step and repeat, and we can look at some tools we can use for version checking. I'm also going to just quickly look at conical warping, because I'm sure as label printers, occasionally you're going to get a file that needs warping, for something like a yogurt pot or something like that. So we're going to have a look at how we can handle that as well. And then later on in the session, we're going to go a little bit more into a deep dive into how you could connect your automation system with your MIS system. And in doing that, there's various parts of Automation Engine that that's worth looking at, such as our products database, our jobs database. We've got a browser interface as well that we think people may be interested in seeing, because it gives us a slightly different user experience, but there are benefits in that user experience depending on the use case as well. And we may get into some more advanced step and repeat routines as well. And at the end, if we get time, I've put variable data printing down there as well, how we can take a file, create multiple variables, and then create a step file off the back of that. Okay, so let's continue. Just going to head over to my desktop. Yeah, so the handouts, just before we start, you'll see there's a handout for 7 ways to improve your workflow with Automation Engine. We have another handout which deals with addressing the question of, is Automation Engine right for you and your business? And another handout which really gets into the detail around why saving just 10 minutes can lead to 50% more jobs. So these are all relevant to what we're seeing today. So yeah, get over to the apps button and download those, and certainly share them with your colleagues. So just before I start, I'm going to assume that there are people on the call that haven't used Automation Engine before. Just want to quickly show you what it looks like. Okay, now this is an application called the Automation Engine Pilot, and this is really the client interface with a server. Automation Engine runs on a server in the background, and this is how we interact and interface with Automation Engine. So we can search for files, search for jobs. Dave's going to be covering the jobs interface a bit later on. But the real intelligence in the system is building these workflows. Now, what is a workflow? It's just really a collection of tasks that are all strung together with these little green pipes. Okay, you get a bunch of tools in the toolbox, and it's all about building out a framework that describes exactly what needs to happen to your file as it passes through the studio and into plate making. So everywhere you see a little task, it's performing an automated function, whereas typically there'd be a person performing that same task. Okay. Now before we start, I just want to show you my use case file here. So I'm just going to open this in ArtPro Plus. ArtPro Plus is a native PDF editor, so we have the benefit of working exclusively within the PDF workflow. Just pop it down here. Okay. So this is the file that's been supplied to me to work on. Okay, and this is a very typical use case. Again, I think that this looks good, but we know technically speaking, this file is not really good for our processes. So, the first thing I can see here is there's no bleed on the file. I can also see that there's some information around the edge of the design that I'm not interested in. I don't want this information. Okay, I want to get rid of that. So we have no bleed. We have information around the edge of the file we want to get rid of, and we'll also see that it's a flat layer structure. Okay, we just have one graphics layer, so it's not like the cutter is on a separate layer. I can see there's a foil separation that's not on a separate layer. So I really want a way of just making that file good without really having to touch it, manually myself. Okay, so what I can do is head over to Automation Engine. We can take that file. That's the same file, and we can just run a very small workflow that's just going to do a few things. Actually, it's going to apply some action lists that we've created inside of ArtPro Plus and published to the Automation Engine server. And it's also going to use an Automation Engine ticket called Optimized PDF that does a huge amount of optimization on the file. And we'll run the file, and then we'll just pick back and we can see what it's done. Okay, so there goes the file. It's the first action list, which is preparing the file. Second action list is creating bleed. And then we hit this optimized PDF task that's going to actually, based on some separations, it's going to create us some artwork layers. Now, if we have a look at the resulting file, So if we just compare that to the file that we started with, we can see we've gone from here to here. So just calling out what changes we see. So we've now got a fully layered file. Okay, so we can see that we've got the graphics layer, we've got a cutter layer, we've got a foil layer, we've got a bleed. Now that bleed has the system has made that bleed. You see there we have no bleed. Here we do have bleed. Now that's a function. And what's really clever within there, that automated function, is if we look at the background, you can see that it's intelligently followed all of the contours, the direction of this background element, the vignetting in here. Yeah, so this is really clever because it's cloned the vector graphics outwards, and it understands the direction. You see here, the top here, it's continued perfectly this shape as well. Now that works with a vector, or that will work with an image as well. So it doesn't really matter, but it's all about adding data where you don't have data. So in that case, we've not had to worry about that. That file is now good for our next process. And we also got rid of all of this stuff around the edge. And you can see it's, if I zoom out, you can see it's all completely gone. And just a word on how we manage that. Now, inside of ArtPro Plus, we have the ability to create these action lists. Now, we won't have time to perhaps pick these apart today and really show what it's doing, but we have a toolbox with over 150 different automated actions, and it's just a case of stringing those together, testing them. So once you've got something that works, if I was to run that on the file here, you can see that it's dealt with the preparing of the file, and then if we run the add bleed, okay, now as good as it is doing it in the editor, it's not going to give us a high level of automation, but publishing that action list to automation engine and running that through there means we never have to put hands on that file again. So hopefully that's clear. So that's really preparing a file, getting it ready, setting the trim box, the media box was something else that took place in that automated action. And then so let's now look at just a bigger workflow where we want to take a label, we want to check that label, we want to add a proof legend on that label, send it out for approval, get the approval back, and do a step and repeat in a fully automated way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same file again, and I'm going to put it into our shuttle application. Now the shuttle application is just a scaled back automation engine pilot. That's all it is. So it's kind of more aimed at the user rather than perhaps the administrator who's building the workflows. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed this workflow some data. Okay, now we can take data from the file itself, but if we want to do things like show the customer name on the legend, maybe we need to say what the customer is. Maybe we want to put the job number somewhere. Perhaps we want to tell it, do you want it pre-flighting? Do we want it trapping? What step and repeat template do we want to put it into, which we'll come back to in a second. And do I want to send it off PDF approval? Now, when Dave takes over with his section, this, as good as this is, if you've got an MIS platform or some job management system, the chances are you're going to want to push that data straight into Automation Engine, and we'll be looking at that a bit later on. So I'm going to launch that workflow. Okay, so it's created an Automation Engine job for us, and again, Dave's going to explain what an Automation Engine job actually is, but I can tell you very quickly the parameters that we've pushed in have now been pushed into a database, and that database is reflected here inside of this job. So the workflow routing now is taking place within the context of that information that I've just put in. Okay, so we can see the file's gone through an action list to prepare it, optimize it using the optimized PDF task. And we've gone through what we call a pit stop pre-flight check. Okay, so some of you may already be using pit stop, N-focus pit stop. It generally acts as a kind of an extension to Acrobat. Within Automation Engine, we have the pit stop pre-flight engine built in. It's the very same N-focus technology. And here we can build a pre-flight profile. Okay, so I can build a profile. Again, I won't show you the building of the profile right now, but there we can say things like, I want to check for minimum resolution on the image, minimum line weight of a line thickness. If it's a flexo plate, perhaps I want to make sure that the line thickness isn't below a certain threshold. Maybe I want to make sure that the color mode is CMYK. Maybe I want to make sure that there's the printing inks are within tolerance for the amount of stations we have on the press. All of these kind of things you build into a pre-flight template or a set of templates, because you may have different finishing processes that have different technical constraints. And then we just get the system to tell us if it, really simply, is it passing or is it failing? If it's failing, we want to know why it's failed. Okay, so it's put it on to an intervention point. We call these user intervention points, and it's saying, hey, the job's not really good. Have a look at it and see what the issue is. And what it will have done is it will have written as a pre-flight report as well into the job, and it exactly explains what the problems are. So it's telling me there's some impure black, there's a line weight less than 0.1, so that they're really errors. And there's a warning, there's an image resolution of 295 where I want 300 DPI. Now there's a bunch of other stuff in here as well. Again, we won't go into it today, but there's information around fonts, layers, images, color information. It's a very rich report. And if you do get a file and it's not fit for purpose and you want to send it back to the person who sent it to you, an attached report, you know, it does a good way to explain what the technical issues are with the file. Now, what's kind of interesting here as well is I can open this file back into Art Pro Plus. So let's say I want to fix it. Let's say I'm comfortable with fixing this file. I can see a few questions popping in, guys. That's good. We'll have a pause in a minute. We'll have a look at that. And what I can do is run the very same pre-flight profile. Now, when we talk about the connectivity, Art Pro Plus Automation Engine is sharing the same library of pre-flighting profiles. So what I can do is run the same one, and I'm going to see the same information that we got in that report just then. Okay, now a very good feature of Art Pro Plus is that I can zoom into these items here, and I don't need to click in the artwork. I can just use the breadcrumbs, the navigator up here to fix it. So let's make that 0.15 mil. Let's look at the CMYK black issue, which is in this character just here. Now I can just go in here. Again, I'm not clicking in here. I'm just clicking up here. And finally, let's look at the image. Now that's 295 DPI. I'm going to live with that. You know, I'm looking for 300, but I can suck up that. That will be fine if I make a printing plate from it. And once we've done that, we can just check again. The file will get scanned, and you can see that the two errors are now gone. Save the file, continue the workflow. So it's a really nice kind of workflow, because we're not, you know, we're only coming out of the automation when we need to. So we're only touching that file if it's absolutely important to do so. Just one point to make around the pit stop pre-flighting as well. We can fix in a profile as well. So for example, let's say one of the checks is to say, is my black set to overprint? And the system detects that it isn't. We can get the pre-flight profile to apply a fix and make the black go to overprint, just as an example there. So in some cases, you know, it will fail, but it will apply a fix. You still don't actually need to touch the file. So I'm just going to tell the system now to continue. We just look at the have a little look at the workflow again, see what it's up to. So the file continuing now. We've had the pre-flight, and it's now applying a dynamic legend. Okay, so if you've got a house standard for a proof legend that you want to put in, we can create that as a dynamic mark, and we can do that inside of Illustrator or inside of Art Pro Plus, and we can apply that inside of the workflow. So no more manually adding of proof legends. And you can see here now, we've just gone into this little workflow, which is automatically going to send that to me for approval. When I kickstarted the job and entered the data at the start, I put my email address in as an approver. So that's going to automatically come to me. Now, again, this is a good example of how we can really speed things up in the process, because that file is going to go straight from the automation system to the customer. So we're not sending it to a colleague or a customer services person. We're going to send it straight to the customer, so that the very second that task is completed, the customer now has a hyperlink in their inbox. They'll click on that hyperlink and it'll open the file up in our online viewer, which we'll look at in a sec. And just something to note here, you can see it's now waiting. Okay, so the workflow is pausing and it's waiting for somebody to go in and approve or reject that file. So let me just hop over to the share and approve service, which is what you see here. Now, again, we're not going to really go into a lot of detail about share and approve. If you're interested, head over to our website. But it's a very easy to deploy system. It's a software as a solution only. We host it for you. You just pay for it, a small monthly fee to use it. And it's a really excellent way of engaging with customers via this kind of online approval method. So the customer would see a dashboard that looks very much like this. They'll get a ping. We can see here this particular approval is pending. We can go in. This is all via the internet, via the web. And we can see here the proof legend that Automation Engine has applied. Okay, so it's used some information that it knows, such as the date. We know the customer because I told it that. It knows that I'm the customer contact. The color swatches are coming from the file metadata. The trim information here is coming from the file metadata. So there's an awful lot of information we can put into one of these automated proof legends, and that really opens up, to a much bigger degree when we connect to the MIS system as well. But there's some basic, not fairly advanced actually, checking tools for checking separations. Maybe the customer wants to take a read on the barcode, make sure the number's correct, whatever it might be. There's an awful lot that we can do inside of the viewer. Like I say, really, it's just to show you how we can get a file from Automation Engine out on approval very, very quickly. And more importantly, when the customer makes their approval, it comes back to us instantly. So I'm just going to press approve on this file. So let's say we've checked that file and we're happy with it. I'm just going to go straight back to Automation Engine. Now, this task here has already kick-started. Look, it was waiting. It's no longer waiting. And the file now is already automatically trapping. And then we'll see that it's going to go straight into the step and repeat routine down here. It could be that you trap before you send the proof file. Some customers I speak to send a file that's not trapped. Some people send a file that is trapped for approval. That you can decide where you sit that in the workflow yourself. Okay, but there it goes. Just kind of pushing through the workflow. We'll have a look at the step and repeat file, and we'll also have a look at how we got there as well. So how it knew exactly how to make the step and repeat. Okay, so it's on an intervention point. It's asking me to just check the quality of this step and repeat. So we open it back into Art Pro Plus again. Here's our step file. Okay, so just remember here that the file was prepared, the bleed was added, the trim box was set, the file was cleaned up, the file was checked, validated, proof legend was applied, the approval process took place. This is all happening through the automation, and the step and repeat, is continuing that story. Now, when you get back into Art Props, you'll see it is actually still an interactive file. So, if you wanted to go in and make some further edits, you could, but typically speaking, you wouldn't. But we can say, yep, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that. I wanted to say I've performed my check. That's good. And we can say complete. Now, what it's going to do now is make a flexo plate cutting path. So for those flexo folk on the call, what we can actually do if you're running a cutting table, like a Kongsberg table, and you're making a flexo plate, and you have to cut that plate, we can also create a cut line which the Kongsberg table can read and understand. Okay, so we can create a situation here where the cut lines are applied. We can make a nested version, make the plate from that, and then we can extract all that cutting data and cut on the Kongsberg table, to cut that flexo plate. Obviously not relevant to you if you're just a digital printer, but and just to show you how that looks, we can visualize that inside of Art Pro Plus. We have this flexo print preview, okay, which kind of shows you what it would look like on a printed plate, on a printed web. And then we can look at the individual separations here, and you can see the plate cut. You can see exactly where it sits. Okay, so it'll be different per separation. It makes the most optimal cut. There you go. You see, it's kind of done what it needs to do there to fit in that gap. So that's another automated action that typically speaking, without Automation Engine, you're not going to be generating a cut line, any other way other than doing it manually. And just going back to the step and repeat, just if you're curious as to how the step and repeat works, at the start of the workflow, I actually picked an XML file to use as a reference for the for the step and repeat. Okay, this is something that you could do. Just a very simple text file. It just describes the cell width and height, number across, number around, the gaps, the edge lead. You know, and you could perhaps give that a die reference, so you can just pick that at the start of the workflow. So again, if you're running an MIS connection, as Dave will show us later on, a lot of that information could well be in the MIS system, and it will automatically flow into Automation Engine. But if you want to start doing automation and you're not quite there on your journey yet, you know, this offers a really kind of simple, easy way to get into doing some automation. Right, so just before I continue, I think we better check the questions, Dave.
Yeah, okay. I'll take one. There's a question about the PDF action list, John, that you showed, and whether or not they're downloadable. The answer is yes, they are. You can share them across seats of Art Pro Plus, and the nice thing is that they can be also shared with versions of Automation Engine as well. So if you run an action list inside of Art Pro Plus and you're happy with it, and it's obviously they're all beneficial, but if they have a benefit across say multiple operators or whatever, then you can share them across multiple Art Pro Pluses and into Automation Engine as well.
Yeah, and I think this particular question could actually be asking for a copy of that action list, maybe, Dave.
Yeah.
In which case, yeah, we can come back to you on that one and share that with you for sure.
Yeah.
There's another question here. Is it possible to use this automation system for offset plates? Absolutely. We're going to be doing another one of these sessions coming up where we're going to be looking at more litho offset, in particular folding carton. But yes, you know, our technology really, you know, sits across all of the print processes. So thanks for the questions, guys. Please keep them coming in. Hopefully this is making some sense to you all. I'm just going to continue a little bit further on this step and repeat journey. So as good as that step and repeat may have looked, you know, you may be thinking, well, that's great, but we do mixed sheets. We don't, you know, we maybe have two designs on a layout, not one design. Okay, so I've got a green file and an orange file here. I can show you how this would look. Okay, so we can send both of those down the automation. The same workflow again, but this time I'm just going to simplify it. I'm just going to only run the step and repeat routine. Okay, so it's on its way. So this time it's going to make what we call an XML run list. And just to shape that run list, I'm going to just tell it exactly how many of each label I want in the layout. So let's say I know it's 2 across 2 around, so I've got 4 designs. So let's say I want 2 of the orange one and 2 of the green one, and complete that intervention point. So it's created what we call an XML run list, which we'll look at in a moment. And in this use case, what it's doing is it's actually doing the step and repeat from the run list rather than the files. So what we should hopefully see in here is the result of 2 orange ones and 2 green ones. Now, it may be that for some reason you want to run those different. Maybe you want to run swap the colors around or whatever. So what I can do there is say, great, no problem. I'm not happy with it. I want to change it. I can just say, revise the placement. And it will come back to me, and then I can just say I want to swap the orange and the green. So the thing to bear in mind here with the automation is we're doing this with data. We're not opening the file. We're not moving things around. We're not copying and pasting. You know, we're doing this with a completely automated system, and we're doing it with data. So it really means that, you know, there's not really any scope for error here. This is very much a different way of working to what you would otherwise be doing. Okay, so we can see that they're swapped around. Now, if I just quickly look at the XML run list that we've created in the background to explain what that looks like. It's a very simple instruction. It calls out the file URL, so the design, and it calls out how many of that design that I want inside of the layout. Now, again, with an MIS connectivity scenario, there's a good chance you'll be able to get your MIS to kick out something that looks like this, and if it's not perfect, we can take the data and build one of these from the data. also inside of Automation Engine using some of the tools for remapping XML and things like that. We can make database queries, pull information in, build a run list. But yeah, just so it's different that with the single label step and repeat, we send the PDF into the task. When it's multiple label, we send a run list instruction into the task that describes exactly what labels are going to be required and how many. And then the fill order or the flow is then determined by the settings within the workflow task themselves. Okay, so I'm just going to check for questions. Is it possible to have custom bearer bars in the step and repeat for flexo plates? Absolutely, 100%. In fact, if I just open one of these files up, let me, let's go for maybe the stepped one. Again, we're focusing on Art Pro Plus here, but we do have some Illustrator plugins that enable you to create these dynamic bars as well. So this one here is a very simple one. It's just a little eye mark that I've got sit on the file. So let me just remove that. Let's say I want to add something a little bit more complicated. And again, we do this in the automation. We wouldn't do it in this way. We'd apply it inside of the workflow. But you can see here, look, we've got some flexo type bearer bars, and everything in here is interactive. So if we change the ink sequence, you'll see the little wedges here update. There's some other information in here that you might, like the file name, the separations that are appearing on the plate, today's date. So we set these up as a dynamic template, and then through the workflow, we can then apply them. So it could be that you have different bearer bars for different presses. So if you think about that inside of the workflow, all that we'd need to do is route the file based on maybe the press type. So if the press type was a parameter in the Automation Engine knew, it could send it off in different directions and apply the appropriate set of bearers for that either that customer or that press or whatever it might be. Okay. So a little bit about view compare now. So just thinking more about Automation Engine, what other tools does it have available to us? So it has its own viewer. So if we wanted to say, well, I want to use it as a QA tool, and I want to check things like, how do I know that if somebody's asked for an amend between versions, how do I know the amend has been accurately carried out? So let's say I've got a version 2 file here, which I can view inside of Automation Engine. So this is the Automation Engine viewer. It's part of the Automation Engine setup. And again, it's a little bit like maybe you've used Acrobat Pro, similar in that you can turn separations on and off. There's a bunch of technical tools in here. So when we, if we was to, for example, use the Esko RIP to make our plate TIFFs, which we could have included in that bigger workflow, we can also use this as a TIFF viewer as well. But let's say I want to compare this file to the version 1 file. I can just select the version 1, and here it will show me, look, there's some differences. Wherever we see a colored blob, it just means there's some differences between versions. We can zoom in and say, look, on the left, version 2, correct. They asked for this little logo to be taken away, and we can see that that's been actioned. Okay, so the Automation Engine viewer, it's certainly, for some of you out there, it may give you some value when it comes to technically checking and evaluating files. And just on that note as well, if I just go over to inside of our workflow, I perhaps didn't fully follow it through beyond the flexo plate cutting pass, but we could have continued to what we call an image and engine task, another Esko product. It's our own RIP based on the Adobe PDF engine, where we can set some technical parameters and inside of the workflow. So we're not leaving the workflow here. The file comes through, the plate cutting paths are applied, and then we instantly can rip the file. And what we would have ended up with is a set of plate TIFFs. We can create a set for viewing and evaluating. So we can go in and measure the dots and the angle, screen frequency and angle, and this kind of thing. Okay, so just a little bit there, just to at the end of that workflow, we could have continued down the ripping route as well. Okay, so trapping. Just do a little bit about trapping, because I'm sure there's a lot of flexo people on the call. I'm going to just take a very simple file. and I think trapping's sometimes easier to demonstrate with a simple file. It can get very difficult to follow with a very complex design. So I've got a cyan background, I've got Esko star in yellow twice, and I just want to trap that file. Okay, so I can just run that through. Now in the workflow that we showed earlier, there was a trapping stage inside of the workflow, so it normally sit inside of the end-to-end workflow. But for now, I'm just going to quickly push it into this tile. So in here we can say what is the trap distance. We can set some technical parameters, and we can talk about whether we want to do pullback, yes or no. Do we want to inherit trap settings from file, which I'll come on to in a second. Okay, so let's just run this through. Trapping is a very good example of a task that really, you should look to automate. I mean, it's something that without the automation, again, you may have some tools that help you, but really, the best workflow is to let the system trap it, and then you evaluate that trap. 99% of the time, it's probably going to be fit for purpose. And if it isn't, you can open it back into the and just finesse it, tweak it, change it if you needed to. But let's look at what it's produced. Okay, so although we asked for a 2 mil trap, I made a big trap on purpose so we can see it. Can see here that if I was to measure that would be 2 mil. But down here, you can see we've got something different going on. You may wonder why that is. So if I just remove the trap layer for a second, inside of Art Pro Plus and the latest desk pack trapper inside of Illustrator, we have a concept called trapping tags. Okay, now this is relating to setting points of difference at object level. So here, if I click on this star, you can see I've said on this object only, I want to trap inwards with a distance of 3 mil. Okay, now this object here has no trapping exceptions or no trapping tags set. So if I trap this file, just to show you very quickly inside of Art Pro Plus, so we've got a 2 mil trap distance, create trap layer. And this is exactly what the workflow is. And so the trapping algorithm from Art Pro Plus is inside of Automation Engine as well. And it's a really great best-in-class algorithm that's we find customers that test it generally don't go back. They tend to use the automated trap for everything. But if we click on here, you can see this little exception is giving us an opportunity. So if you think about this, you think that you trap a file using automation, and then you know that there's a particular icon or a particular logo or some kind of shape where you know that the overall trap and the overall trap value and distance isn't going to be good for that one item. Here you can just set that exception at object level, and it gets saved into the file. So just by saving that into the file means that when we trap it inside of Automation Engine, just as when we trap it automatically on screen here, we get a point of difference. So, it's a very different approach to kind of going in and then just manually changing that one object, when we can actually kind of bake that difference into the file. Yeah. And if we was to just say, well, let's make that 5 mil and go outwards instead of inwards, trap again, you can see that it's continued to kind of acknowledge what we're asking for. Yeah. So it's a very interesting approach to trapping, and we're finding customers are having a lot of success with this methodology of setting trapping tags at object level on the file, and then still leveraging the automation. And as I said, you can trap in here, and if you do want to go in and finesse the trap, the file is still interactive, so you can still go in and make some changes if there's something in there that you don't like. Okay, so any more questions in there, Dave?
Yes, we got a couple, John. So the first one is there a possibility to build extended workflows for simultaneous actions for different presses, i.e. multi-page booklet-based labels? The short answer is yes. I don't think you really showed it, John, in the example, but just to summarize it, we do have tickets or tasks inside of Automation Engine, so we can route and build really complicated workflows. So if you've got peel and reveal, if you've got booklet labels that require different impositions, different stepping, different gluing, different bleeds, all kinds of different technicalities, then we can build these routing tasks into the workflow and make them really intelligent, so that they split a PDF and follow different tracks depending on what needs to happen. Okay. And the other one, can we get some tasks, some example tasks or tutorials if needed for our own Flexo processes? I'm guessing that you don't already have automation engine. That would be part of the deployment process. As Esko, we do have quite a lot of experience building these workflows at different customers, and yes, we do have example workflows, bases to build upon, and part of that process of deployment is understanding the processes that you have today and mapping those processes into a deployment of automation engine. Okay,
good. Okay, thanks for the questions, guys. Keep them coming. That's brilliant, and thanks for your help there, Dave. All right, just going to head back over here now. So we're just going to now move on to conical warping. Just keep an eye on the time. We're about halfway through the session, so I think we're okay, Dave, aren't we? I think we're just about on track.
Yeah.
So if we look at conical label walking for a moment. So the use case here that I want to follow is what happens when you get sent a die that's already warped effectively, and maybe you need to create an unwarped artwork from that. Okay, so how do we, based on this file here, how do we calculate what the rectangular shape would be for us then to be able to warp it correctly into this finished die shape? So inside of Art Pro Plus, we can select that die shape. We can then go into the warp menu here, and we can create a warp grid. Now, rather than do our own kind of measurements of the large radius, the small radius, and all the other things that you'd typically do, and we can just say calculate from selection. Okay, so I click that button there and create. And what it does is it draws me a rectangle, and it basically, so now if I draw any element, artwork elements into here, and then was to warp it, it's going to warp accurately to that pot shape. So let me just take this. Let me just take this warp grid that it's recommended. Okay, and then I can go over to say an unwarped file that I've already set up. Okay, and I can paste that into the rectangular shape here that you see has been taken from the rectangle that the warp is recommended as to work from. So that little green key line was actually what we call a warp grid. And now I've applied it onto this artwork. What I can do is I can go back into Prepress and warp. And we've now got a fully warped file. And one of the really cool things about this feature as well, other than the fact that the warp is, it's warped the images, it's warped all the vector, everything on it, it's followed the outside bleed as well. But let's say I didn't want to warp a barcode, for example, I can just unwarp that single element. Yeah, so there's we have the ability to kind of, it's what we call a non-destructive warp. So whenever we warp an object, it's completely undamaged. So let's say there's some text here that I wanted to make some text changes to. I could unwarp it, go and make the text changes, and then I could rewarp it again. So it's a really excellent way of managing your warped files. We find the customers that are using this are getting some really excellent results. Now, there's another part of this story, which is, what if I want to now visualize this in 3D to make sure that the warp is actually looking correct from my field of view? So if you have access to our Esko Studio tools, again, we're not going to cover that today because we're going to run out of time, but you can create a warped label, and then you can place it. It actually creates it as a 3D file, like a collada file. And just go into here, find my 3D file. There it is. It's a .zae file, which is a collada file. And then I can say place it on top of this design here, and we can see. Actually, let me just. I think I'll move my crosshairs there, slightly out of alignment. There we go. So we've been able to warp the file, and now we can visualize it in 3D as well, and use that as an assessment to know whether or not we're going to be happy with that. And of course, you could export that file as a 3D PDF and send it off to the customer if you wanted to as well. If you want to get into really high quality 3D visualization, but still using very simple tools, it's worth looking at our Studio product, which is a plugin to Illustrator where you can start applying some really high quality visual embellishments. Again, some of you may already be using it, but not for today's session, but it's definitely worth checking it out on the website, and you can get a free trial of that as well if you want to. So that's taking a file, warping it, and then visualizing it in 3D. And the most important thing about that was calculating the warp, from the warped cutter that had been supplied to us, and using the technology to create the warp grid, tell us what the unwarped shape would be like, and then we could then warp a design perfectly into that supplied die line. Okay, now the last thing I want to show before I hand over to Dave is just another approach to step and repeat. Okay, so we looked earlier at using data to do a step and repeat file, which was the XML file, if you remember, which described the die parameters. What we can also do inside of ArtPro Plus is create a step and repeat layout, and then use that as a template for all future automation step and repeat jobs. So here, what I've done is, using the tools inside of ArtPro Plus, I've been able to kind of just say, well, I want to put these flexo barrel bars on. Again, you could apply those in the workflow, but I'm just doing it here to make it more visual. We can put the step and repeat how we want it. We can save that down. Now, I've used the green design there, but really that's just a placeholder. That could just be an empty PDF, just with nothing more than the die lines on it. It doesn't have, again, I'm using a design day to make it visual, but so we've got a green one. Now, let's say we get another flavor of that come in. I'll just go into here, and let's have a look at the other design I've got, which was the blue one. Okay, so I've got the blue design, and I want to take it into that same layout using the automation. I don't have to do anything more than save down the layout that I've created inside of ArtPro Plus, which saves as a PDF file, which is what you can see here. And then inside of the automation, I can then say, I want to do this time, I want to do a template-based step and repeat. Very simple. All I need to do is point to the template that I'm interested in. The system shows me a representation, what it's going to look like. Now, again, this would be a smart name usually. We wouldn't, we won't probably get into smart names today, but we have ways of just automatically populating this with dynamic data as well. So it might be that the MIS has instructed the automation engine as to what die layout to use, and it will just automatically appear in there. But if I take the blue design, run it through the template there, we're now going to get the same layout, but with a different design. Of course, that's we could send 100 of those in, 150 of those in, however many, over the course of a week, a month, or whatever it might be. And we've only ever had to set that template up once and then just continually repurpose it, especially remembering that the bearers and everything are dynamic as well. So, every time we run that job, we'll get the new job number, we'll get today's date in it, or whatever it might be. And so it's just, again, it's an automated approach, which is started by creating a physical layout, something visual inside of ArtPro Plus. So just another alternative. Now the VDP side of things, I think we'll come back to after Dave's session if we get time. But I think now's a good time, Dave, to hand over to you, mate.
Thanks, John, for that very, very comprehensive view on how to use Automation Engine. Okay.
Just before we continue, guys, as I can see a poll question has dropped in. So if you click on the bottom right, so there's 4 questions in there. Can I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions in there. So the question really is quite simple: is automation right for your business? So the responses are yes, I already automate. Automation isn't necessary for our small company. Implementing workflow automation is too complex. Automation will change our current workflow, or it's not the right time to make the investment. So if you guys could go in and submit your vote there, we'd be very, very interested to see what the feedback is. Now, some of these questions actually do relate as well to the downloads in the handout section. So hopefully, you know, if you think, for example, workflow automation is too complex, perhaps we can change your mind, or you might be able to learn something in the handouts that might change your opinion there. So I'm just going to submit my vote. Okay, so there's a lot of people on the call. I'd say the majority of people already have some kind of automation. Good to see nobody thinks that it's too complex at this stage. And then we have a mix on the other three. So it looks like good to see that a lot of people out there are already using automation tools. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Okay, Dave, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I'm just going to rewind a little bit and just show you a little bit about a couple of concepts that we have inside of Automation Engine, which I think are very important. John already touched on jobs, but I want to touch on products as well. So inside of Automation Engine, we have a concept called products, where we can store SKUs. So here, for example, I have a product, and in this example, it's whiskey, but the product itself can consist of multiple components, if you like. So in this product, you can see that I have a front label, a back label, a neck label. I have a bottle and a cap. So multiple components that are related to this actual one product. And if I get information on this product itself, you can see that we can actually store metadata or information against that product as well. So we can see, you know, this is the general product, or the top level product is a whiskey bottle. It's a bottle. It's maybe the location for the manufacturer might be in London, or the filling. You can see I've got some information about what sector it's in, what it costs to create that unit, maybe some stock levels. These can be, you know, anything you can dream of can go in here as well. And we have somewhere where we can say, you know, what material is this product on. You can see here as well at the bottom that I've got actual multiple statuses. So each product can have a status. Very important when we're talking about multiple components. It might be that we can't actually produce this job until that product has been approved by the customer or the client. So very important that we can keep a status that relates to each product. What we can also see in here is that we can see where this product has been used in a job. So we've got like a historical log of where that product exists in jobs that have been run in the past. And again, each product can have parameters. In the top level products, I don't have any in this example, but if I go down into each like sub product or product part, you can see that I can store where the file is, for instance, what press this might have been run on in the past, what material, how it was finished on a Deco die press. There might be some barcode information in there. Again, we've got status. So if I toggle through each one of these, you can see I've got a few that have been approved. This one's been rejected. And the parameters to these, you know, it might be things like, again, it could be like where is it being manufactured? What type of manufacturing is it? And maybe the order quantity. Again, against each part. So for instance, this cap might have a different manufacturing location, and they might actually outsource that process because they're not a printer. We can't print the metal. The other important thing about products is that if we have approved a product, say we've done a lot, I mean, John's just been through a lot of work where we've gone through the one-up, we've done some trapping, we've put some technical information in there, maybe we've done a barcode, whatever it is, we put a lot of work into that one-up and we've got final sign-off for that piece of artwork. If we store it as a product, what we can do is pull those products into other print jobs. Okay, so the difference between products and jobs is that a product is a SKU, and a job could be a multitude of SKUs or a particular press run. So if I show you what we have when we talk about jobs, here I have a whiskey job. And if I get information on the whiskey job, here you can see that this is, I've got an order ID, where it's being manufactured. I can see it's got a category of label, when it's due, who the customer is, who the customer representative, sales representative or service representative is. Maybe I know what inks are in that job, what rulings and angles are required, what the printing method might be. So this might be mixed, you know, I might have flexo for the traditional separations, and then if I've got a hot foil, that might be applied digitally or over letterpress or whatever that is. And again, in this job, I might have parameters that are relevant to that actual job. So as John said, you know, and when we talked about the workflow, what we could do is actually route on approval method. I think we got a question about, you know, can we route depending on what type of label it is, or maybe how we're going to finish it. Then yes, I mean, this might be that we have what we call a routing task inside the workflow, where we can make a decision as to where we branch off to. So it might be that if it's a share and approve, then we push this file to share and approve, or this stepped file for share and approve. Or if it might be an email approval that we want, so a more traditional approach, then we could enter a value of email and steer that down a totally different process. So again, you know, we can have things in here like, do we need approval before print? Is there a die library and a particular die that we're going to reuse for this job? You know, which die press are we going to use? Is it die cut? Do we need inspection or not? And are we going to inspect these labels, and by what method? And here I've got AVT. You know, what type of exposure unit? Are we doing backlighting? Are we using XPS? What type of imager are we going to use? We're using CDI 4260 crystal here. You know, what press internally we're going to run this job on? Who's the press operator? Again, what marks are we going to use for this press? So these variables can be picked up and used in the workflow. So you don't have to create a workflow for a particular stream of job. We can actually make them dynamic and drive this data into the workflow to make the workflow more intelligent. Okay. And again, we've got things like, you know, what's a printing method, what's a printing type, we've got narrow web, you know, RIP resolutions and substrate. But it can be anything you like in here. We've also got areas for barcodes, different step and repeats. Anything you can think of can consist as data inside a job. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is just to show you a little bit about the product and how that sits. Like, again, you know, you can see here that this exists in this job, and it tells me how many quantities were ordered of this particular product. But if I actually go in here and let's just create a new job. So I'm just going to click here. I'm going to go new job. I'm going to create. This can all be done manually or automatically. I'll show you the automated method in a second. But what I can do now is, now I've got a new order. If I go back to my products, I might want to go, okay, well, I'm going to actually send these products into that new job. And what I can actually do here is just link the product to the job, select my new job, how many I want. So in this instance, I might want 10,000. Launch that into a workflow, and you'll be able to see, if I jump back into my products again and get info on here, you'll be able to see that now I've got this new order on where that product has been run, if you like, and attached to that job. So we're not duplicating the files, we're just duplicating some information about those files. Okay, right. Let's take a look at how we might want to steer from an MIS system. So in previous expert afternoons and things like this, we've mentioned driving workflow with data before. In this instance here that I'm about to show you, I'm just going to show you what we can do with MIS systems. So what I have here is a simple MIS that I've got running on my laptop here. But we offer, again, there was a question earlier on about, are there workflows that we can work on for our own Flexo processes or whatever. We have white papers with lots of different MIS vendors. So we have a lot of standard work that can be imported into your systems and used. So what I'm going to do here is run like a typical label white paper workflow, if you like. So when John showed us this workflow earlier, it's following exactly the same process, but in my version here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit some data here. So I'm going to create a couple of products, and it's going to go away and do me some quality checks. It's going to ask me to do some technical edits. It's going to ask me to, proof this file and send it to the customer. And then I'm going to say, right, okay, create me a job and let's do some step and repeat. So if I go into my products, I go to my product parts. Here I have a couple of products. I've got an apple and a lemon version of this label. So if I go in here and just update this, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to change this status here to ready. Now, if I click ready and click save, what I've got happening in the back end of Automation Engine here is what we got called access points. So what I can do here is actually trigger something to happen. So here I have quite a complicated query, but all it's saying is really just go and look at that MIS system, go and look at that database and select all the product parts that have got a status of ready, and launch those jobs into the workflow. So you can see here at the bottom that it's actually picked that product up and it's actually running that through the workflow. What you'll also see here is that I have this status, and what Automation Engine will do is feedback and update that status for me. So if I'm sat in front of my MIS system, SAP, ERP, whatever it is, it's a bi-directional process. So I can see here straight away, I don't have to go chasing people for where things are. The system is actually updating my MIS, so I know that, okay, the files have arrived. The pre-flight's okay. So I can see straight away that these milestones are being pushed back into my MIS. So as that one's going through, I'm just going to run exactly the same process with the lemon label. So I'll run that one through as well. And exactly the same thing will happen if we take a look at the statuses on here. These will eventually update when that lemon label runs through. Just to show you what's happening in the background in the products, what I should have now, you can see here, I've got these two products now living alongside the old whiskey label here. And what you will see is, as they run through, the actual statuses mimic what's happening here. So I've got some status changes in Automation Engine, and they're actually updating again as they update in the workflow. Okay, so in a second, pre-flight okay. What's happening in the back is quite a complicated workflow, as some of John's were, but this is kind of an out-of-the-box workflow, if you like, or a white paper. So we've got lots of actions happening here down the bottom. You can see I've got a multitude of things happening: adding to products, optimizing, interacting with the database, pre-flighting with pit stop. But more importantly, what Automation Engine is asking me to do as maybe an operator or customer service or whatever it is, it's prompting me within this interface to do something. So as John showed earlier on, now I've got, you know, a few reports. So I've got this pit stop report, so I can have a look at this pit stop report here. So if I click view, it's showing me there's some errors on the file that need to be fixed. So again, we could open that up in Art Pro Plus. I've got access to the file itself again, so I can see that. I don't have to go tapping on anyone's shoulder in Prepress. I can see that the file is there. And also, if I am checking the file, there are certain things here that Automation Engine has prompted me to have a look at. So, you know, I need to check that the width and the height are right, you know, the winding direction, that it's flexo, it's on the right substrate, for instance. You know, it should be no more than 6 separations in the file. All these things, anything that you can think of that's pertinent to your checks can be added to the list. All I'm going to do for these two is just say I'm happy and I've completed that step, and Automation Engine will continue in its journey. And again, the next stage here, going back to this little infographic, we might be prompted now to do technical edit in the studio. So there were some errors. As a customer service or a QC person, I might not have the ability to correct those, or we might automatically correct them with some action lists or some pit stop action lists. But if not, I might want to do those edits manually in the studio, in Art Pro Plus or in Guestpack. As this is going through, you can see here, probably in the workflow there, that I've got an error there in pit stop, which is not surprising, as it told me earlier. You know, there were some concerns. So what's happening next at that technical edit stage is that it's asking me to do some corrections. You know, again, I've got the checks that are necessary as an operator, but I can also, I've got access to everything that I need, you know, a size report, the print integrity report, and the file itself. So I could open this file up directly from here in Art Pro Plus. I can say, okay, I've corrected the errors. If I click that button, what it will do is go back through that checking loop and just make sure that those checks have been done. Or I can just choose to ignore them. For this demo, I'm just going to choose to ignore them and just say that I'm happy to proceed to the next step. So again, coming back to this infographic, we've done the technical edits. The next stage might be, you know, we need to create a PDF proof for the customer. And in my example, what I'm going to do is create like a proofing card. So here you can see I'm creating what's called a PDF report. And what it's going to do there is basically create me an A4 report card. It's going to scale the graphic or that label into that report card and put some furniture around that file so that we can see, you know, what separations are in that file, how big it is, you know, the winding direction, lots of other metadata. Okay. So while any second now, it will ask me to check that. And here we go. So we're ready again. So it said now, this has gone to maybe approval to the customer, again, by share and approve or whatever it is. In this one, in this example, it's more of a manual process. So we might have sent this out by email. But what I can do here again in the viewer is have a look at that report card inside this view. So I can see things like, you know, the size, what the file looks like, some metadata at the top here, the winding, the colors, you know, the coverage. If coverage is important, I'm guessing it is. You know, we can pull that out into a report as well. So again, helping with costing and those types of scenarios. All I'm going to do now is say, I'm going to say the customer is happy and it's been approved, and that's it. That one-up process, that product process is finished. And you can see now that these products both have a status of approved. Okay. So what's next? step and repeat. Okay, so step and repeat wise, what I have again in here, I have a job, if you like, so a label job, a typical label job. And again, what I can do here is if I change my status again to ready, following the same principle, I've got the cell sizes in here, I've got substrate widths, I've got gaps, number across, number back. And if I save this, what Automation Engine should do in a second is pick that information up and create me a job. Okay, so again, I've got an access point which monitors for that. If I click scan now, just to, it's already picked it up. It will pick that file up. It will create me a job. So let's go to my jobs. Here I've got this production job. And in here, you can see that it's already creating that stepped platform for me. So I'll click in here. It should give me two options. So what I've asked it to do with that information is create me a simple 4x7 of 1 and add some bearer bars. And on the second one, I've asked it to create me that mix. So I've got a 2 and a 2 of both variants. Okay, do we have any questions there, John?
No, Dave, I think you're doing a really good job of explaining it. There's no questions in there. Still a lot of people on the call, so we can press on.
Great, okay.
We've got around sort of 15 minutes left now.
Right, okay. So what I'll do very quickly next is introduce everybody to the browser version of Automation Engine. If I log into my Automation Engine through the browser, what I've got access to here is what we call a role-fed label scenario. So again, if we don't want to train our users, our customer service people might not be interested in learning the pilot. What we have here is the ability to give them an interface which is a lot easier to use. Again, working in products and jobs. So I've got to do, I've got products, I've got production jobs. I could add a new product, but we are running out of time a little bit. So what you can see here is I've got the variants that were approved in my earlier example. What I've got in here is everything that happened to those products as they went through that workflow. What we can do in here when we're creating new workflows is we can actually nominate workflows. We can fill in some of that information that we filled in through the MIS is available here as well. But once that product is approved and in the system, we can also use the viewer inside of the browser. Okay, so a very similar look and feel to the Share and Approve browser, very same technology, but we're actually running this viewer in the browser again, not inside of the pilot, but in the browser. Very similar, same technology, same functionality almost, but again, just not another application to learn really, just another area of the system to look out for. So we've got, we can check the channels, we can zoom in, zoom out, we could check Braille, we can check, barcodes, sizes, we can turn things around, we can even compare. So if I jump back into my products and if I say select both of these here and click compare, what the viewer will do is actually lay those two together for me, and I've got different ways of looking at those. Again, this is like one on top of the other. We can actually do a blink check if you like, or we can do side by side as John showed us earlier, so we can see straight away where those differences are. Okay, and then lastly, really, in this viewer, we might want to actually create a job or a production job. So in here, I can say, okay, for example, I might want to create a digital label. And what I'm going to do here is just add those two products that we just created. So I'm going to add these two products. I can only add them because they've been approved. And let's say I want 20,000 of each label. Okay. I'm going to tell it which folder I want to output that file to, because I'm generating a PDF. And then what I can do here is I can actually pick from a die library, or I can create a new die. So in here I could create a new die, new tabular die, and use that. I've already got one in existence, fortunately, for this demo. So I'll use this one. Now what it does, it basically gives me some hints as to what my maximum repeats should be. So it says 295, but I know I need to, for this instance, I know I said I've created a digital label, but I'm going to put some bearers on it because they're more interesting than just high marks. So I'm going to increase that width to about 310, and I'm just going to add, maybe 10 mil onto the bottom of this repeat as well, and center that on the web. Again, down here, what I can do is select some marks. And again, we've got a marks library. So I'm just going to say add left and right bearers. I could add lead in, lead out. I could add some header information, some product information in some trailers. I could even put some gaps between the row, depending on how we're going to finish it. All that's doable within this browser interface. And then lastly, what I can do here is I can actually populate the lanes that are available to me on that die. So you can see here that I've got two options. I can fill with blocks or I can fill with lanes. We've got the quantity. I could put some empty stations in as well, just to fill those potential gaps. But if I click autofill, then it'll do it this way. Or I can clear that. I can click blocks and separate it this way. For the sake of the demo, I'll just create lanes. So we get 2 by 2. I'll save this and I will actually start that production. Okay. So again, going back to my order here, we can see customer information, material orders, and I can see that we've started production. If I jump to status, you can see that it's preparing those production files and it's running. So again, I don't really have to go back into the pilot to see what's going on. But for the sake of the demo, what I will do is go in here. Let's have a look at today's jobs, the digital demo that I just created, and you can see that it's actually finished creating those files for me. So let's have a look in that output location that we specified, which was in my standard demos and output. And you can see here that I've got two files. I've got a JDF. So if you've got a digital press that's capable of taking a JDF file, then we could push the actual PDF and the information pertinent to that run. So the quantities and how that is repeated on the web, or we could just push out the PDF itself. Again, as I asked it to generate that file for us. Okay, that is that. Are there any questions, John, on the...
No, we're good. Unless we get any questions now, I think we have got 5 minutes left. So I think what we should do is quickly look at VDP just to close the call off.
Yeah.
There's another poll question pops in, guys. If you have a look down on the poll button, which is, would you like to be contacted for a personalized demo regarding today's topic, products and solutions? And it's a yes or a no. So be very good to get some feedback on that one, please. And just to, if you have to leave, thanks for staying with us. I realize we've tried to pack a lot in here to this hour and a half, but I think I can very, very quickly finish the VDP demo here for us all. So just going to crack on then. Sorry, there's one question in there, Dave. What have we got there? Okay, so was what you showed, is it part of a Web Center add-on? No, that what Dave just showed there is actually a function of Automation Engine. Yes, you could, you could take that concept into Web Center and probably develop it, but no, just to be clear, that was Automation Engine, what Dave showed. It's just the browser view, and the browser view has some pre-built functionality in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
just worth mentioning on that, John. I mean, that interface really is designed for an internal use. So if you've got internal QA, QC, it's really about being more intuitive. You don't have to learn another application. It's there. You click the file and you can click the icon, which is the eye icon, and it will open up and view.
Yeah. Awesome. Right, I'm just going to try and squeeze this in the last few minutes. So for those, some of you may already be doing variable data printing. Some of you may want to get into it. The basic principle is, we're going to create hundreds or thousands or millions of labels, and each repeat is going to be different. So it could be a number that changes between each cell, could be a name, could be an address, could be a graphic, could be a color, could be anything. Now, the way it works inside of our technology, we have this in Illustrator and in Art Pro Plus now, is you need to author a one-up template and connect it to a data source. Now, the data source has to be CSV. Okay, so here we have an example of a CSV file. We've got some names, addresses. We have some Pantone references. We have some web addresses. We have some image names. Yeah, and the idea is we build a single template. So it's just an Illustrator file, no different to any other Illustrator file at this point. But what separates it now is using the Dynamic VDP plugin. What we do is select that database. Okay, and it tells me there's 100 records. And I'll start to preview the data in those records. And once we've got that, we just need to click inside the file and create a relationship between the static text and the dynamic element coming from the data. So if I was to click, let's get some open up. This is one I've already set up. So let's look at where it says pour femme just there. If I was to look inside of the properties of that, I can see that the pour femme bit, we have a gender tag, and that gender tag is coming from the CSV file, and the CSV file has a heading somewhere in here of gender, and it's either going to say pour femme or pour homme. Excuse my pronunciation there. It's probably not very good, but you get the idea. Now, further down, if we look at one of the barcodes that we've made dynamic, this is an Esko dynamic barcode, again connected to a data source in there. We're connecting it to the EAN13 field. Now, all you need to know really is each of these rows is a separate design. Okay, so once you've clicked around and connected, so I'm going to connect images as well. Images, and I'm going to select the color that I want those images to be. So if I pick this image on my template, it would be a 1-bit TIFF with no color data. But if I click on it here, for example, and look at the properties, we can say the color of it is either going to come from nothing, which means it will be the color of the file itself, or we're going to pick it from a database. So here I can say I want the color to be the foreground color or the background color that was listed inside of that CSV, and then you can see what happens is now as I cycle through, I get to see all of those different permutations visualized inside of Illustrator. Still one file, although it looks like many files, it's still one file connected to the CSV to give us a representation of all those other files. So that's the authoring of the template. Okay, we export that as a template file. We hand that off to Automation Engine. And all we need inside of Automation Engine is the CSV file and the template itself that we've just exported. And then all I need to do then is run a quite a simple workflow that's going to take the CSV database. It's going to pre-flight the database for us. This is very important because once you've set your templates up, the idea is you can just connect it to as many databases as you need to, and that will validate the database to make sure it's a good match for the template. Because once the template's set up, you can connect it to as many CSV files as you need to. So it's taken, it's pre-flighted the connection with the database, tells me everything's cool. It's now expanding the data, and then we're going to get a step and repeat file off the back of it. So that will just take a moment to process. Now, this is, in my example here, we've got 100 designs, but this could be, as I said, 1,000, 100,000, however many you need to fulfill the order. Okay, and there's the step and repeat file just done. File's just optimizing now inside of Automation Engine. And we've got a file now stepped here, which is perfectly ready to go straight onto the digital press for printing. If we just open it up, I'll have a look at what it looks like. Some questions in there, Dave, while we're finishing off?
No, I think you've covered everything, John.
Yeah. Seems to be a bit slow. Let me just... Okay. So we've got 5 pages with all the different variations on there. Excuse me, my computer it seems to be on a go slow rather annoyingly right now. Let me just go back to here. I think the computer is telling us it's time, Dave.
Okay.
Let me just let me try again. Okay, VDP steps file. Any plans on making, there's a question here, any plans on making rules regarding VDP properties like rule-driven VDP? That's a really good question. I don't know anything specifically that we've got to address that, but we are always developing the VDP offering. I don't know if there's anything you can add on that one, Dave.
I mean, we do have some basic rules in there, but nothing complex regarding positioning or anything like that. No, I mean, just basically, text-based rules. Yeah. So we had 100 lines inside the CSV. We've ended up with a step and repeat of 20 in each page. So that would be 5 step and repeats. So I can see over here, look, I've got 5 pages, and each of these is fully matching the data from the CSV. So very quick, a little bit rushed, but we've kind of overrun. But I did want to get that fed in, and again, if you want any more information on that, you can reach out to Esko, and we can follow up and have a conversation with VDP as well if it's something that you're interested in doing but you're not yet doing. Okay, anything else, Dave, in the questions? Not that I can see in the questions. I think maybe a closing comment. I mean, some of you on the call might have heard in the press recently that we acquired Tilia Labs and Phoenix. If press optimization and material optimization is something that you're really interested in, then maybe reach out to your account manager or put a query in through the website or to myself and John, and we'll point you in the right direction. But that's something that obviously adds quite another string to Esko's bow, so we can bring that process a little bit more upstream and build some intelligence into step and repeat and press optimization. So just worth mentioning at this point. Yeah, good. Okay, well, unless there's any more questions, guys, thanks for staying with us. We really appreciate your attendance. Without some people interested in watching these sessions, there's not really. It certainly makes it interesting for us to get the feedback and the questions coming in, and it's good to see so many of you on the call. So very much appreciated. Keep an eye out on social media, etc. There'll be some more of these sessions planned in this year for sure. I mean, it's something we've been doing now for a while, and we're going to continue doing them. And but yeah, thanks again to finding the time to join us today. Very much appreciated. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's probably a good time there to close the call, Dave. Yeah. Thanks again, everyone. And just echo John's sentiments there. Yeah. Thank you. Good. Thanks for your attendance. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Bye-bye. Thank you.